So Malator asks, what do you think are the pros and cons of a studio being tight-lipped about updates and future versions versus being totally open about the roadmap and news while being developed? Yeah, so the upside, I think the upsides are really, really obvious, which is your community gets really energized. Every bit of new news that you discuss about the game can really energize your community. Can make them feel really involved with you, connected with you. It makes the entire experience feel a lot more friendly and open. And you can also, in addition to, exciting your community about the new things that you're working on, you can also get feedback about stuff from them while you're working on it, and you can make better stuff because you've got that back and forth going with your community. So there's a lot of really good reasons to be open. And I think that people in the community could probably think of 9,000 more, because I think that for a lot of you, that is what you want from us. You don't want us to be holding back a bunch of stuff. You want to know what's going on in the game, except for like things that are spoilers. I imagine you probably don't want those, but pretty much everything else, I imagine you probably do want to know, and you'd love to, the human brain is really good at coming up with reasons why the thing we want is the best thing. And so I'm sure you could come up with a bunch more reasons why being open is the best policy. So what I should probably spend time on is answering why it sometimes is not the best policy. So one reason is marketing, because there is sort of like, there's this whole, discipline of people who are good at marketing, who know how marketing works and knows how you can make your marketing dollars be the most effective. And it seems like, and I'm not a marketer, and so, I'm not really speaking from an area of like skill and study and expertise, but what I've picked up by being marketing adjacent is the idea that there's at least this theory, and I imagine it must have been proven out a billion times, that if you release a lot of information at once, close to the time when people are intended to buy or wishlist something, then you build up a lot of excitement, and a lot of word spreads really quickly, and you can build up this sort of trigger this explosion of enthusiasm for your product, which people will go out and they will buy quickly because the enthusiasm is high, because they're hearing about it all the time, because there's all of this buzz and excitement going on around it. And releasing a lot of information about something carefully at the exact right moment when it'll be most effective can lead to a lot more sales of the thing you're trying to sell. And so, just for the same reason that I don't want a bunch of marketing people coming in and telling me how to design my game, I also respect their expertise in that kind of thing, and I try to not get in their way and tell them how to do their jobs. And so because the expertise coming from the marketing department of whatever publisher you're working with, or whatever, because they have sort of learned these tried and true methodologies for building buzz about a game, getting people excited, and getting people to buy it. I rely on their expertise, and I do what they tell me. And a lot of what that involves is not revealing all of our information up the moment it becomes available, and like trickling out a lot of information over time. That's great for building community, but it's not good for building buzz. And if you're and building like a rash of quick purchases. And so if your game is going to be reliant on a lot of excitement, like building a huge sort of player base really, really quickly and selling a lot of units really, really fast, if the economics of your game is going to rely on that, then you have to listen to the marketers and reveal information about the game on a timeline that's going to support that. Because if you don't, you might be really want to be very open about your game, you might want to share a lot of information about it, but if you do that in a way that makes half as many people buy your game, it actually hinders your ability to work on and support that game and make more games in the future. And so it's sort of this weird trade-off where it's like a lot of times you really want to be extremely open with your community, but because the economics of the game industry are such that you might rely on that surprising, exciting, very quick marketing push, you feel like you kind of need to hold back, let the marketers do the job that they do, and kind of reap the benefits of a big burst of excitement that that makes your game more successful and makes you more able to make more games in the same franchise and keep supporting that game after release. So ultimately, even though it's not fun to have us hold back a lot of information, it ultimately is good for the franchise, for us to reach a lot of people, and ultimately your enjoyment of the franchise as time goes on depends a lot on our ability to support it, which comes a lot from how many people buy the game. So like there's this chain reaction that does lead to something you want down the line, which is we're able to continue to support the franchise a lot more if it sells a lot of copies. But that means that up front, we have to be a little bit more cagey about information. So that's one reason. Let me catch up with the chat because I've got another one in mind, but I want to catch up with the chat again, just in case I missed something really important here. So Ranith Cord says, isn't State of Decay 2 more of a long-term game community type game rather than a game that wants a bunch of quick sales? So yes, it is now. And that is the strategy that we kind of always wanted, but weren't sure we were going to be able to justify. And you'll notice we are a lot more, and we have historically been a lot more open about post-release stuff with State of Decay 2 than we were about pre-release stuff. We weren't able to take it as far as we wanted to for the other reason that I'm going to mention. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think State of Decay 2 is the kind of game that benefits a ton from us being more open and doing more community building. But we didn't know it was going to work that way when we first started. And so we kind of built up a culture that leaned the other direction because we thought we were going to be a lot more reliant on that initial burst of sales rather than being sort of more of a longevity game that attracts a community of consistent players over a very long period of time and keeps growing that community of players over a long period of time. We didn't know that was going to be the game we had. And so we probably could have tackled the entire thing a lot differently if we'd realized that's what we were building. And so, yeah, so that's kind of the explanation. So let's see here. Okay, so the other thing I was going to bring up is the fact that as experienced game developers, we often realize how much a feature changes from the time you first start building it or decide you want to do it and the time you actually release it to players. And that can create a little bit of a problem because if you're not confident that a feature is going to work out the way you initially design it, one of the ways you can shoot yourself in the foot is telling a bunch of people that you're going to do a certain feature a certain way, and then when you find out you can't, you have to pull the rug out from under them. You have to take it back, a thing that you said. This is something that like our studio learned early on when off the cuff, I think in answer to a random question from somebody in the press, the founder of the company, Jeff Strain, hinted that, in fact, he might have even said it right, that online co-op could be patched into State of Decay 1 after release. He suggested something like that in an interview, and it was widely reported, and then people kept asking about it, and when he went back to the programmers were like, no, I really don't think that's possible. It would be outlandishly complex to try to patch online co-op and certainly couch co-op into State of Decay 1. So no, we can't ever do that. And it was difficult because then we had said out loud, this is a thing we intend to do. And people kept, people who, that was the last thing they'd heard from us. We kept getting the question for years after that about when are you going to patch online co-op into State of Decay 1. We ended up needing to put it in State of Decay 2 because we could build it from the ground up to support it. We were never going to be able to patch it into State of Decay 1, but because we said that intention out loud, it became a thing that we then had to answer for forever. And we had to basically be a disappointment to our audience forever for that. And so that has led us to be careful about what we say out loud we're going to do. When we are sure that a thing is definitely going to go into the game, then we say out loud that we're doing it. And when we suspect that something is likely to go into the game, we will say cagey things like, that's a really good idea. Oh, I really love that idea. Wouldn't it be neat if we put that in the game? And we'll be very positive about it, but we will not say specifically that is definitely going into the game because we never want to make a promise that we have to rescind because we don't like the sort of the relationship that creates with the audience where, they get this sense, people can build up fairly or not, because I think this is often unfair. I think that people, sometimes you make big plans and you have to rescind them because of things you didn't know. And I think that people should theoretically be understanding about that. But it's also understandable, if somebody doesn't have a complete window into the process of making games, it's not crazy for somebody to build up a sense of long-term disappointment in a developer who keeps saying they're going to do things and then does not do them. No matter how much understanding you have, it's understandable to sort of just build up some negative emotional energy around that developer. And so we don't want to be that developer. We want to say things out loud to you, promise things to you, and then deliver on those promises. And anytime that we fall short of that, we feel like this is a way that we've damaged our reputation with our community, and we want to avoid it. So that is the other reason why we're often cagey about new features before we're really ready to show them. It's because the point where we're ready to play them on the stream and where we're ready to actually like put them in the public test realm, that's the point where we're actually confident enough that the thing is really going into the game that we know we're not going to disappoint you. So that's the other motivation. It's not just about marketing concerns and wanting to sell a lot of copies of the game, because we're past that point. We are in the community building stage of State of Decay 2. That's not really the concern anymore. That was the concern when we weren't telling you, when we were, when Brant and I were doing those State of Decay 1 streams and we were never telling you anything about State of Decay 2. That was why we were doing that. It was because we were trying to, not undermine the big marketing push that was going to happen, at some point before the release of State of Decay 2. But now the reason why we don't tell you everything is because we don't want to disappoint you. We don't want you to be stuck with promises that were unfulfilled. So there you go. Those are my two big answers for why we don't just tell you what we're working on all the time. Sometimes it's because of marketing. These days, it's more because we don't want to disappoint you.